So will a federal budget next week bring fiscal prudence or dramatic industrial policy? And can it do both? Goldy Hyder is president and CEO of the Business Council of Canada. Goldy, great to have you with us. And let's start right there with the line that the government may have to walk between fiscal balance, but then offering something on the affordability front.
Well, look, this is a critically important budget at a critically important time, and Minister Freeland needs to find the right balance, making sure that her spending isn't inflationary but targets those who may need more support during this period, but also a response to the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States. There is clearly an expectation. Earlier today, the president of the free world gave a speech about 200 meters behind me here, and what that is all about is the need for democracies to work together to respond to the issues of our time, and nothing's more important than climate change and security. Both of those things need to be in this budget. Otherwise, it looks like we're a little tone deaf to what took place here.
Well, in the context of what the U.S. is doing to attract investment, should Canada be doing more of that? We are seeing it. The Volkswagen will build a battery plant here. We may be spending untold hundreds of millions on that. Is that the kind of thing we have to do in light of the U.S. activity?
Well, it certainly is within a fiscal framework, and it certainly is if you're able to use that to drive growth. That's the ultimate growth here, the goal here. Jobs for Canadians who pay taxes to help the revenues of our government. We cannot be silent on this, Amanda. The reality is the lemonade stand across the street's giving away free lemonade. That doesn't mean we do the same thing, but it means we need to be able to respond. And that includes already taking a lot of the money that exists in government programs, bringing it together to create that industrial policy that you spoke of earlier, not letting it being piecemeal. Making some tough choices, being deliberate and intentional about answering that question, what do we want to be when we grow up, and how do we leverage and play to our strengths of natural resources, energy, food, critical minerals? This is the opportunity for Canada if we choose to seize it.
One thing we haven't seen is a reduction in spending. The province of Ontario just delivered a record budget, and we haven't seen the federal budget yet go back to pre-pandemic levels. Is that something you're hoping to see?
Well, I think one of the areas where government spent too much is on itself. The size of the public service just grows. And structural spending, that so-called permanent spending, continues to increase. I think that's what we need to watch for, is how much is being baked in for the long haul here when we know that there's anemic growth ahead of us. There's a possible recession and a slowdown. That kind of messaging to Canadians and more importantly to investors would not be welcome. And I think we have to be very careful that she strikes that right balance and puts the emphasis on how are we going to grow our economy, how are we going to compete, how are we going to create jobs.
So is there one thing, Goldy, that you hope to see next week?
A response to the Inflation Reduction Act. We have no choice, Amanda, and Canadians need to realize that governments do have to invest sometimes in businesses, but those businesses are investing in them through job creation for not only them, but the generations to follow.
Thanks for being with us, Goldy.
Great to be with you.
Goldy Hyder is president and CEO of the Business Council of Canada. Time for the takeaway and enlightened self-interest. Concerns about the safety of banks aren't just a problem for investors or customers of those banks. A loss of trust in banking in general threatens our whole system. If we all withdrew our money at once, the system fails. Think toilet paper in pandemic. The supply worked perfectly until everyone wanted more than they needed, and then the breakdown was shocking. In the wake of U.S. bank failures, the question is being asked, why not raise deposit insurance levels? At the moment in Canada, up to $100,000 is insured, though that can be spread across various types of accounts. So the real number is as high as $800,000. Still, why not make the insurance cover the full amount of deposits? We're not talking about covering losses on risky investments like a mutual fund portfolio. Deposits are only insured when they're cash or next to cash, like a GIC. And since we make next to nothing on those deposits, but the banks get huge benefit from them by loaning them out, why aren't they covered completely? One reason is the cost. Deposit insurance is paid for by the banks, not its customers, but we likely pay for it in the end through higher fees on other products. So we need to create some kind of transparency to make sure banks were covering the insurance out of their own profit, not our fees. The other argument against covering all our deposits is the moral hazard argument. If banks don't have to worry about their customers' deposits, they may play fast and loose with them, the argument goes, and make the risk of bank failure higher. But that argument is flawed. If you actually forced banks to segregate funds for it and pay out fully, it would keep their behavior much more prudent. My takeaway? We give banks a lot of leeway because we benefit from the good their loans do. But that doesn't mean we should forget whose money they're risking. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.